Hello there.
Hello, Felipa. It's such a
Hello.
pleasure to be here with you. My apologies for my delayed arrival.
Oh, well, welcome so much. This is live. We're meeting for the first time. This amazing technology that allows us to be on opposite sides of the Atlantic and yet in the same room.
Yes, well, and actually, I have to tell you, we are on the same side of the Atlantic because I work remotely from Switzerland.
Oh, remotely. That's fabulous. Switzerland. Oh, how wonderful. Oh,
So just a hop, skip, and a jump away.
yeah. Well, you might find me on your doorstep at some point because I absolutely.
Wonderful. We'll go for a hike.
Oh, you know what, Jessie? Do you mind if I call you Jessie?
No,
Is that
please
okay?
do.
I've just arrived back from a hiking holiday in the north of Spain, so I'm fit and ready to hit the mountains right now.
That sounds wonderful.
Well, joking apart, we're here to talk about you and your business and what you get up to with your functional medicine. You know what? I'm an absolute fan of functional medicine and, the holistic approach to health and wellness. And we're totally on the same page when I read that you really just want to transform everybody's experience of life and for it to to change what is possible. And this is the thing for me around menopause. We start to feel the walls closing in, the boundaries are sort of impinging on us. Perhaps our joints might be suffering. All sorts of mental health issues, physical health issues can start to impinge on our experience of life. And so, anything that we can do to help people to just push those boundaries back a little bit, give them a bit of breathing space to have this full experience of life. So, thank you and welcome so much to Moving Through Menopause. It's wonderful to have you.
It's such a treat to be here with you and your tribe.
Thank you. Well, we're talking today all about weight management, and sometimes I feel, this is a sensitive topic, and I do want to deal with this sensitively because it is really about optimal health and what is optimal for health. And to be honest, your body mass does have a bearing on our health, and that's really the thing that I'm concerned that people have this optimal experience of life, heart health, brain health. As much as we can nourish the body with food and movement, obviously, that's my thing. But so where shall we begin? You have lots of things to talk about. What about we start with the essentials? How about that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the 5 essentials of weight mastery. Yeah. Well, in the first essential, absolutely, starting there is great. The first essential really pairs nicely with one of the things that you just said is that weight can be a sensitive subject, right? And a lot of people and a lot of women in particular have a lot of stuff around weight. Um, to say the least, right? And so, one of the things I like to ask people, and then we'll talk about the 5 essentials, is do you know what weight means?
Mm.
And so, Felipa, do you know what weight means?
Ooh, well, I mean, it's a number that comes up when you stand on the scale.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's a number that comes up when we stand on that scale. And really, what it is mass times acceleration. Right? Weight equals mass times acceleration. But how many people relate to the number they see on the scale? Like mass times acceleration, right? Definitely not a part of most people's relationship to the scale, right? Which brings me to the first essential of weight loss mastery, which is being kind and honest. Kind and honest.
Okay.
And mostly people choose one or the other, right? And how that might play out is someone decides they're going to be kind and they're not going to look at what they're doing and not doing, They're not going to look at the scale. They're not even going to look at their labs, right? They're just not going to look because they've been brought up in a world that really collapses morality with this area of their life, right? So good and bad being two of the keywords of morality, right? And so being kind means I'm not going to look because I don't want to I'm done beating myself up. I'm done, feeling ashamed or all the different things that someone might say about how they feel when they step on the scale or start to really pay attention to what they're doing or not doing. So, people will choose to be kind and not look, or be honest and look. Right. And honest more often. Maybe initially it won't start out, beating oneself up, but once someone jumps on the Whole30, it's just a matter of time in my experience before it turns into an exercise of self-abuse, right. So there is a journey, and to me it's really an essential piece of mastering one's relationship with their body, relationship with food, and therefore their weight over time, is mastering an ability, cultivating an ability to be kind and honest. So
yeah. I mean, this is just such a minefield, isn't it? But the more that we can delve into what makes us tick, and as you say, approach it with kindness and yet honesty at the same time, because it doesn't really serve us to bury our head in the sand when it comes to our health, and on lots of different levels. So yeah, I totally concur with what you've just said, and I'd be intrigued to hear about number 2.
Yeah, number 2 is really getting, like, not just theoretically, but experientially, that you're always saying no to something, right? You're always saying no to something. So either, in the most extreme examples, you're saying no to your health and yes to the, extra large pastry, right? Or you're saying no to the extra large pastry and yes to your health, right? But in reality, you are always saying no to something. And in fact, if you think about the totality of our options at any given moment, we're saying no to almost everything except for the one thing we're doing at the moment, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's so very true, isn't it? And yet it is that idea that we compartmentalize these decisions so that we can continue to what's the word, hoodwink ourselves. Is that? Yeah.
That's good. Well said. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, really just getting that our actions produce outcomes. And if we can tap into what outcome are we being a yes or a no to, right? Almost like practice time traveling. That can be a really useful habit to develop. Right? What's the likely outcome of this? And it can be short term. Okay, I'm going to feel bloated. I'm going to feel gross. I'm going to really feel, ashamed or not feel proud of myself, right? Whatever it is. Or on the flip side, I could make this other choice and I'll feel so proud of myself and my digestion will work just fine and I'll sleep well, or, whatever comes with it, right? But doing that time traveling. So yes, number 2 is we're always saying no to something. The number 3 essential of mastering this area is getting very clear on your intention for your health and your life. And another way of saying that, Philippa, is getting very clear on your what and your why. And it's actually an exercise I take people through that I call creating your vision of vitality. And, what this includes is doing a little bit of time traveling to a 5-year future and actually, putting fingers to keyboard, pen to paper, and writing down, if you could just click your heels and make it happen however you would like, what would that 5-year future look like? With your health and vitality as you intend and desire they occur. And not just look like, oh, these are the clothes I'm wearing, but look like experientially. What's it like to walk down the street and have the level of strength in my body I'm committed to, the level of confidence in my body I'm committed to, and really just, show up as my best self. What's that like? And then on the flip side, 5-year time traveling downward spiral,
Yes.
yeah, right. Oh, what would that be like? But the truth is, we all make change out of a combination of the carrot dangling and the stick on the back. What's the future I desire, and what's the future that gives me heart palpitations, right? Right. And so really looking at that is part of the process. And while I say it's creating your intention for your health in your life, I really think a better way to say that might be something like uncovering or discovering, right? Because it's in you already. And it's just kind of like, brushing everything away so you can see the shine of what your real true intention is. And, not just creating our intention or discovering our intention for our health in our life, but also staying connected to it. Because, the truth is, getting out of bed and moving, or making the choice to fuel your body with something that is nutrient dense, that might take a little more time and thought to prepare versus the easy option, those take something, right? It takes something to cultivate those habits. And so the only way, in my experience, people really triumph is when they're very clear and connected to their why. Why would I? Why would I? Oh, So,
Yeah. That's exactly it, isn't it? And I love what you said about feeling confident in your body, because that feeling is a fabulous feeling. But it can be a bit difficult to sort of imagine, if you like, because we are in that present, aren't we? We are where we are, and to see yourself outside of that. I suppose one way is to think of other people that perhaps, who you see them and you admire the way in which they hold themselves as posture. Everybody says, "Oh, she was so upright," or or "Look at that person balancing on one leg and reaching down to." We can, I suppose, if we can't see it in ourselves, we can appreciate it in others, and then sort of think, "Oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind a bit of that."
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Yeah. And we all have mentors in our life, right? And so some of and I bet a lot of your viewers are mentoring others, right? They are actually in certain areas of their life, right? They're the expert. People are looking up to them and saying, how do you do that? Whether it's professionally or as a parent or as a spouse or whatever it might be, right? And so the same thing applies to this area of our lives. If we can find someone who the way they are in their body, or the way they care for themselves, or the way they relate to food and movement and all of the wonderful things that we can do to elevate our health, those are great mentors to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So have we got to 5 yet? I'm not sure.
No, we have not. We've only hit number 3. So I know, right? Number 4 is automate for excellence, right?
Yes.
Automate for excellence really means we're not reinventing the wheel. And you can see this with movement. It might be as simple as, okay, these are the days I do these types of movements, and these are the days I do the other types of movements, right? But not reinventing the wheel every single day really goes a long way. And the automation isn't just around movement and nutrition, it's also around our environment. Knowing what works well in our environment and doing that habitually goes a long way. It can be as simple as when you walk into your kitchen, Are you looking at fruits and vegetables on your counter, or are you looking at, cookies and sweets and, things like that you find hard to resist, but you also know aren't going to forward your health if you're not consuming them in moderation or intentionally, right? And so automating your environment is part of it. Automating, you know, I have some people who automate the nights they go out to eat, right? We're going to eat out these nights, or we're going to order in these nights, and we're going to make food the other nights, or automating the days they go to the grocery store, or how they get their groceries. Is it being delivered, or are they, but figuring out what works and just in duplicating that so that you're not stumped every time you encounter the challenge called what am I going to eat, or when am I going to move, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. No, I mean that automation, it's all over everything, isn't it, at the minute? So, why not make lives easier by as much as what is a routine? I mean, you're going to eat at 3 meals every day, probably, maybe two. And so this is coming. It's not a surprise.
Well said. Isn't that so funny though, Felipa? I don't know about you, but I know myself, there have been times where I'm like, I'm shocked. I need to fuel my body. How could I be hungry? Oh wait, this happens every day.
Yeah. Well, I think I've got the automation down actually. Routine. I'm the queen of routine, and that's not always a good thing. We a bit of everything is not a bad thing, but I am the queen of routine, and my children will tell you that. Ever since they were tiny toddlers, we've had routines, and we've had the way that we do things, and I still do it now. So it's very much automated. So the decision then is taken away from this, isn't it? And especially at times when we might be getting the messaging system, firing off. And so when we've had challenges, when we're trying to overcome the challenges of cravings, or these messages going off, having something just ready there that we can really rely on in those circumstances can really make all the difference, rather than making the poor choices, I suppose, or the less ideal option.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one that doesn't transport us to that place that we've visualized. And visualization, as you talk, it's such a powerful tool, isn't it, to really, as much as we can flesh out that image of what we want our future to be like, look like, feel like, smell like, even, I mean, the more that we can flesh that out, the better. And then have a photograph of it if you've seen it in a magazine and you think, oh yes, that's where I want to be going with this. And then where are we? Number 5 is number 5 coming?
One more. Number 5 coming up here. And that 5th one is, you actually pointed to it earlier, Felipa, and that's, around the mentoring, right?
Yeah.
Actually find someone, if you are struggling with this area over and over and over again, if it's been years or decades of what I like to call the weight loss roller coaster, work with someone who can help you, right? Find someone who you trust, who's a good fit for you and your needs, who you feel like is going to, be a great partner in guiding you and authoring your journey, because this journey really is one that is self-authored, but authored with input, right? Input from people who are experts in different fields. And there are, in this day and age, there's so many different ways you can access those experts, right? Whether it's something like this that we're doing right now, or on, the social media channels, or, poking around on YouTube, lots of different possible ways to access expert advice.
Yeah. I mean, undoubtedly, I suppose I've had a conversation before with a lawyer lady. She's all around tech and legal stuff, and there are some wolves out there, aren't there? We've got to be slightly wary of some of this advice. And, I think the general rule is if it sounds too good to be true, it generally is. It's
Well
quite a
said.
good one.
Well said. Yeah. Yes. Definitely. 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 If someone's promising you something that just, if you look at your experience, doesn't sound possible, you're probably right.
Yeah, that's it. So, but seeking help, it's something we probably do in our professional lives, isn't it? Seek out training and development and one thing and another. And then why not in our personal lives? If we've got a goal and we don't necessarily have all the tools at our disposal, then find somebody who does. And so you and I have this in common, that we love to help people to achieve this. Nirvana, I'm going to call it.
I like it.
Yeah. Well, why not? Aim high. That's what I say. And live life to its fullest. And menopause. I said something the other day. What is it? Age is not a barrier. I've forgotten what I actually said, to be perfectly honest, but it was really good at the time. Let age not be a barrier, but a bonus. There you go. It's a bonus that the fact that we are here in middle life and beyond is a bonus, and we really should honor that. These bodies, honestly, when you start to dig beneath the surface and discover, like I know you have, because you're a qualified physician. It is absolutely mind blowing, isn't it?
Truly, truly. And I love that you say that, Philippa, because it's so true. And I do believe that the more people learn about the miraculous things their body is doing on a millisecond to millisecond basis, it's like, it just, it really, to me, engenders such a sense of gratitude and a desire to care for this amazing thing that lets us be here, quite literally, right? The quote, there's a great quote. I don't know who said it, but the quote is, if you don't take care of your body, where will you live?
Well, that's awesome, isn't it? Yeah, quite. Oh dear, I'm going to be saying that now you've said that.
Good.
So, we've given people with your 5 essentials, we've really given them a focus, a destination that they're aiming for, and some idea of what that might feel like when they get there. And of course, guidance is sometimes the only way for us to be able to step through that process on our own if it's not familiar to us. But you talked a little bit about that vision of vitality and why this is so important, rather than, the stick, I suppose, is the opposite to that, isn't it? This is a bit more like the carrot approach.
It is a little bit more like the carrot approach, yes. And, there's a saying I've heard, a man named Simon Sinek. He's right. You've heard of him, right? One of the things he said as it pertains to business is people don't, quote unquote, buy what you do. They buy why you do it. But I think it's actually incredibly, maybe even more important when it comes to this area. We as individuals don't really buy what we do. We buy why we do it, right? The why that's underlying the get up early, put on the shoes, get dressed, go to the gym, or whatever it is, right? Like that, even for those of us who are deeply devoted to our health and vitality, it's not like every single day I want to chop vegetables. It's like, I actually very rarely want to chop vegetables, but it doesn't matter. My why is much bigger than my want. It's just much bigger. It's not even a conversation I give much airtime to, right? And I know you can very much relate, right?
Oh, absolutely. And to be honest, I don't mind chopping vegetables, but that's probably because I've turned it into an opportunity. Cooking is something I've done, for many, many years from scratch without the aid of packets or, whatever, things that rustle. And it's really, really enjoyable when you get into it. But if it's not, then it's a fabulous opportunity to listen to a podcast. There's a plug
Yes.
for us. So
Absolutely. And I am on board with you, Felipa. I do use my chopping time to either FaceTime with loved ones or a
yeah,
podcast. But yeah, bring in something that is I can do at the same time for sure.
yeah. So there we go. But what people really want always, without any exception, I think, is a quick fix.
Mhm.
So, what I know that is the most common barrier that we could remove today, like right now. Go on, tell me.
Well, there are a few, but I mean, the
Oh,
number one is ourselves, right? But, right. But one of the biggest barriers to, mastering this area of our lives is that there's this all or nothing approach, right?
oh,
It's all in, all out. And that's something like the Whole 30. And on day 31, people have, a big pizza and a bottle of wine, right? That's like the all or nothing approach
mm,
persona, in
yeah,
living. And really, the approach I invite people to step into is mastering their middle ground. And that's actually a very different experience, right? Because the all or nothing approach fundamentally is overindulgence or deprivation, right? Those are the two
mm,
options, overindulgence or deprivation. And the thing is that overindulgence and deprivation, those are both born of self-aggression, right?
mm,
Neither of them after someone has overindulged, which is different than indulging, no one feels proud of themselves. Nobody feels good about themselves. And the same thing is true when people are feeling deprived, right? So those are broken, that all or nothing approach and the overindulgence or deprivation. But really stepping into a whole new approach that's born of self-love, that's what it is to master one's middle ground. And
mm.
and it really does take something in this world that we live in, where there are quick fix promises left and right. And, there are a lot of images that were delivered that ultimately tell our brain we're not, the way we are isn't how we should be, right? And so we need to fix that as soon as possible. And it does take something to put the blinders on and have a conversation with yourself called, what's a better game rather than what's a perfect game. Just what's a better
Um,
game, and start to be in that journey. What's a better game? What's a better game? What's a better game? And when people put their blinders on and play that game in earnest, over time, it's like compounding interest. It's amazing what people are able to produce in the way of how they feel, their experience, the number on the scale, their lab numbers. It's awesome.
yeah. I like that because success begets success, and so deprivation is really doomed to failure. And so that middle ground is change one thing, do one thing differently today and tomorrow, and then maybe there's another thing you can add to that.
Mhm.
So I mean, this is a journey that some people have been on for a long time, and struggled for whatever reason. And whilst I was on my mountain climbing holiday that I told you about, I listened to the audiobook, Food for Life, it's called, by Dr. Tim Spector. Have you heard of him?
I've heard of him. I've not read his book.
Oh, well, I listened to it, I must confess, as
Mhm.
I was hiking, and that for me was just the perfect combination of information and scenery at the same time. And so the thing that I'm always really keen to impress upon people is that not all food is equal, is it? is the problem. And so you've talked about the whole 30, and that is, taking it to the extreme. But essentially, the things that we entertain in our bodies can be the thing that contributes to the failure. And so how do we sort of, get around changing how we view, for instance, thinking of certain things as treats that we, if we have that, it makes us feel good. This whole dopamine sort of, cycle, and breaking into that, and sort of, changing the palette so that we can appreciate things that haven't been through the factory. So what would you say to that, please?
Oh my goodness, there's a lot there. There's so much I could say. Yeah, no, but really great points, Philippa. Change does happen, and it sometimes happens slowly, right? When it comes to changing the palate, I will say that change can happen pretty quickly. And by pretty quickly, I mean 2 to 3 weeks. That's not long at all. Most people can do anything for 2 to 3 weeks. And again, we're not talking about the hardcore Whole30 approach in those 2 to 3 weeks, but where I have people start is, when I work with people, I actually have them work off of a shared tracker. So a Google document where they track their nutrition, and I can see it real time. And that way I can direct them towards their low hanging fruit, right? Because everybody, I like to ask people, what's your kryptonite, right? Do you have a kryptonite, right? And people usually do know what their kryptonite is. But in that tracking exercise, we can see, okay, low hanging fruit that's going to produce spiral up benefits. Thinking about some of the people who I've worked with recently and their unique, kind of low hanging fruit. There was one woman who was drinking about 3 Diet Cokes a day. So that was her low hanging fruit, was like, okay, we have a few different ways we can go about this. And I am a big fan of collaborating to come up with the next step, right? Because if I'm prescribing, it's probably not going to be sustainable. But if you are playing a hand, I'm advising and we're talking together about, okay, what do you feel like the next best step is? It's kind of like crossing the monkey bars, right? I'm going to tell you, like, okay, the monkey bars there are a few monkey bars, and you're going to tell me how long your arm is, right? And so then we know where our next step is, right? But in that instance, we talked about, okay, we could do, okay, you could go cold turkey, no Diet Coke. You could say, I only have Diet Cokes on these specific days. You could create a cap, right? And this is a conversation I might have with someone around alcohol too, right? Something like this. But we don't, what I really, in service of having the change be sustainable, we want to make sure it doesn't feel like punishment. And part of that is really having people get clear on what we talked about earlier, their vision of vitality, right? Because when they really get that their intention for their health and their life is no drama, it's actually dependent on making these changes. It's a different thing, right? So for that woman, it was Diet Coke. And she actually initially had committed to, okay, I'm just going to have Diet Coke on the weekends. And then when we reconnected, she was like, no, it's just easier for me to give it up altogether. So she gave it up altogether, and it took her about 10 to 14 days and the cravings were gone, right? So that's one example. Another thing that I will say that I see with some frequency is one of the ways we can cut cravings is to have people start their day off with a stable blood sugar, right? And so eating a breakfast that has sufficient protein, some healthy fats, fine to have some nutrient dense carbohydrates. That means they're either high in fiber or high in vitamins and minerals or a combination. Anything in that world is going to keep the blood sugar level stable versus doing something that is sugary or simple carb centric that's going to fundamentally get someone on the blood sugar roller coaster, which will lead to cravings all day long. Right. So, that is definitely a common place where I'm like, okay, let's go to work on the first thing you put in your body.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is it, isn't it? It's not always even about managing weight. It's oftentimes, particularly around the time of menopause, our digestive system is disrupted and playing us like a fiddle. And so, taking a nutritional approach to managing digestive issues, I mean, it's kind of the first place I would start anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. No, nutrition can go a long way in cracking digestive conundrums for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that's at the root of a lot of, how we feel generally in ourselves. That vitality that you talked about, that comes from within, doesn't it? It's, and it shows on the outside when you start to, and people will say, oh gosh, what have you been doing?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, this is it's really important for people to have an opportunity to explore different ways of thinking about lifestyle and how we can enhance this experience of life, because let's face it, we only get one shot at it, don't we? Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, and I agree. It's when we feel our best and we look our best, we can be our best. And that's just to me what it's all about.
Oh, I mean, it really is. It totally is. Well, unless you've got anything else that you would had on your agenda to say, Dr. Jessie.
No, that this has been
No?
wonderful. This has been so lovely, lovely, Philippa.
Well, thank you. So where can we find you? I mean, I know you're in Switzerland
Yeah,
now,
that's
but
right. In Lucerne. No, but you can you can find me at wellempowered.com. And for any of your listeners, if you are interested in exploring working together, whether that's one-on-one or one of my upcoming group collectives, please be sure to tell us where you heard about us, because as a gift, you'll be receiving 10% off. So, so you can feel free to schedule a complimentary consultation. That's good if you're interested in exploring working one-on-one or interested in exploring participating in a group. Either way, that's a great place to start. Also, social media at Well Empowered on Instagram is one of my big places.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming along and sharing, some really great tips for how we can, just continue to navigate this life that we're living. Time is, we're not necessarily equipped with all these skills ourselves. And so reaching out to somebody it really can make all the difference. And I'm sure you've been changing lives for a long time now already. And we just feel so great when that happens, doesn't it? Don't we, rather?
Absolutely. It is that I just makes my heart do backflips.
Yeah, absolutely it does. It's exactly why we're here. So if you need help, if you think some support would be in order, then do by all means reach out to Dr. Jessie. And if movement is on your agenda, then you know where I am. Precision Limited. I'm online and I'm available to by the power of technology, visit you in your own home and to make movement magic. I just feel so fantastic every day when I do this stuff, and it doesn't have to be hard, and you don't even have to sweat most of the time, do you? So yeah, come along and have a chat. Like Dr. Jessie said, we are here to help you to live your best life. Thank you again so much for your time. It's been wonderful to chat, and we'll say goodbye for now. Take care. Have a wonderful
Thank you
rest of
so
your
much,
day.
Philippa. Such a treat.
Thank you. Take care. Bye now.